This episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast is brought to you in partnership with KWS.
Well, we ended the estate tax. There is no estate tax on farmers. So when a parent leaves their farm, what happens is they'd borrow money to pay the estate tax, and they were not able to pay it. And some banks are ruthless; they wouldn't do anything, and they would end up committing suicide. We have totally ended the estate tax in those situations. So there's no estate tax.
Donald Trump leaves UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in stony silence as he explains why American farmers don't pay inheritance tax. But would British farmers really be better off if President Trump was in charge of UK agriculture? Is it time to get an electric farm pickup? We look at the latest all-electric truck as it goes on sale in the UK. Jeremy Clarkson's farm goes down with bovine tuberculosis, and a Scottish beef producer leaves almost £500,000 to a farming charity. Welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
And we go straight to our top story. US President Donald Trump this week explained why the USA has effectively ended inheritance tax on American farmers while sitting next to a silent Keir Starmer. President Trump made the comments at a press conference during his 4-day visit to Scotland while the UK Prime Minister was sitting beside him. This is what he said.
Well, we ended the estate tax. There is no estate tax on farmers. So when a parent leaves their farm, because again, a lot of these farms, they don't make a lot of money, but it's a way of life, and they love their way of life, and they love that dirt. That dirt is the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. They love it. I mean, they're farmers. They love doing it. They don't know how to do anything else, but they don't want to do anything else. I speak to farmers. I say, would you like to live in my penthouse in Manhattan? It's the most beautiful. No, sir, I want this farm. And what happens is, we were losing a lot of people to suicide. They'd borrow money to pay the estate tax, and they were not able to pay it. And some banks are ruthless; they wouldn't do anything, and they would end up committing suicide. We have totally ended the estate tax in those situations. So there's no estate tax.
That's President Trump. Now, Donald Trump's comments have been welcomed by opponents of UK government plans to impose inheritance tax on British farmers from April next year. But what exactly is the situation with inheritance tax or estate tax in the USA? We spoke to agricultural journalist Josh Baitke, policy editor for Farm Progress in Dallas, Texas. And I started by asking Josh how estate tax works in the USA.
Well, at the beginning of July, Congress passed and President Trump signed a bill. You may have heard of it, called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. This included a lot of the president's priorities, upping support for border security, cutting taxes, increases in defense spending, and for the estate tax. Basically, there were some tax cuts enacted during the first Trump administration that that increased the amount of property that was exempted from estate taxes. Those are set to expire at the end of this year. The Big Beautiful Bill Act made those cuts permanent and also increased them. So from a farm standpoint, farmers are now able to exempt a greater portion of their deceased relatives. Sorry, I'm forgetting the right term for that. Sorry, but the estate tax works where when you die, a certain amount of your estate is taxed before you can pass it along. That includes farmers and farms in particular. Now, the interesting thing about this is this was a very popular bill among farmers to see this exemption to the estate tax, nearly doubled. But even before that was enacted, you're talking about less than 1% of farms in the U.S. would have been subject to these estate taxes. We're talking about large operations, anywhere $1 to $5 million in revenue. That's less than 1% of U.S. farms that would have been subject to an estate tax on the farm before then. But again, this is really popular among farmers to see them subject to much lower estate taxes.
So overall, as Donald Trump as president, has he been good for US farmers, do you think, when it comes to agriculture?
I think most analysts will tell you that the policies that he's putting in place right now will be bad for agriculture in the long run. But right now, we haven't really seen the full effects of these yet. As you know, for example, you have tariffs. That are still, the status of these is constantly changing. If they were implemented like he announced in April, then the effect could be devastating. But right now, we haven't seen that impact because a lot of this is up in the air. And among farmers themselves, overall, Trump remains generally popular. Approximately 80% of rural America supported Trump, and they favored his message of lower taxes, less government regulations, border security. They believe he'd lower inflation. So they still support those goals, but I think he hasn't been in office yet, or long enough yet, to determine how his policies are going to affect farmers long term.
So what you seem to be saying overall, Josh, is that we're in a wait and see situation as to how all of this is going to shake out, all of these policies, including, I guess, the reorganization that we've seen of the USDA.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's raised a lot of red flags. As far as programs cut, Trump so far has focused on things like programs to mitigate climate change, conservation programs, where farmers are incentivized to utilize certain practices because of their climate benefits. He's also cracked down on programs that were aimed at helping minorities and disadvantaged communities get into farming. But the bigger issue may be he's also cut more than 15,000 employees from USDA. And the administration has tried to spin these as voluntary resignations. But in reality, most of these employees were given the choice of take early retirement, take an extended severance package, or don't take it, and you're possibly going to be terminated. So it remains to be seen how USDA is going to function with so many fewer employees. And then just last week, they announced that reorganization, like you said, that includes relocating more than half of the workforce from Washington, D.C. out to other parts of the country, as well as consolidating a bunch of these regional centers into a few hubs. That's going to require a lot of employees to move. And during the first Trump administration, he moved 2 offices within USDA, and about 70% of that workforce ended up deciding not to move. So we're looking at a situation where USDA is going to try to still perform its functions with a much not only fewer employees, but much less experienced employees. So that's raised a lot of concerns over how it will just be able to deliver needs to farmers with fewer resources and less experience.
Josh Bateky from Dallas, Texas, from Farm Progress in the USA. Thank you very much for your analysis of Donald Trump's policies for agriculture. Hugh, as a farmer yourself, would you like to see Donald Trump or someone like him in charge of UK farming?
Well, yeah, look, he's always been pro-farming, and the reason he's pro-farming, it's a Dada Sherlock moment, it's because he's got a huge voter base there. And if you look back at his previous term, the late Bill Northey, we had him on the podcast, who was his Undersecretary of State 5 years ago, whenever he was last in the White House. I remember him telling us on the podcast, in the term that Trump was in, he'd done something like 50 billion of ag subsidy in addition to what was already going out the door, whether it's through crop insurance or various other schemes. So he's obviously going to be supportive. And look, it's good that they are doing that. And I think what this shows, look, it was a real squirming moment, wasn't it, for the Prime Minister sat there and Trump saying, well, yeah, we wouldn't do that to our farmers and we got rid of the estate tax, But it does illustrate, again, the fact that so many other countries around the world have allowances for these capital-intensive, capital high-value businesses with next to bugger all margin coming in, and Trump said it himself. I mean, he probably went a bit too far about saying they just all do it because they love it, and I'm sure that some of them do it because commercially they're really good at it as well. Equally, we all know there's something else that you need to drive a farm business forward, and it's not just about a profit. But yeah, no, it's significant, and will it have any impact? Who knows? It'll make the senior office holders in our government perhaps feel a bit awkward or question what they're doing, but then a lot of them behind closed doors might not pay much regard to what Trump says because politically they're so far apart.
Louise, the situation with Donald Trump and his agricultural policies always a little bit more nuanced and complicated than they might first appear.
It certainly is more complicated. That's no surprise, is it, when it comes to Donald Trump? Look, I think most of us think Donald Trump is as mad as a hatter, really. We know that he's often economical with the truth. But what has happened with this press conference that he did with Keir Starmer, and didn't Keir Starmer look quite startled from time to time? But what has happened is it has kept this whole inheritance tax issue alive. And it's kept it in the media. We even saw, front pages on some of the national newspapers the next day. And that's really, really important, I think, for the farming industry at the moment. So, and look, we don't agree with everything Donald Trump says or even anything Donald Trump says. But it did put the spotlight on an issue which is really causing some trouble. So, in many ways, I think that's a good thing, the fact that it was raised again and it was discussed. We know that some of the things that Trump said weren't quite right. And when you were speaking to Josh, he did put the record straight in the fact that, they do have inheritance tax in the States. But of course, the thresholds are much higher. The land values are much lower, so it doesn't stop generational businesses from continuing and from being passed down the line. And that's what we need to achieve here.
And as Josh also said in the audio, Hugh, some of Donald Trump's policies for farming, this America First idea that most farm labour should be American and domestically sourced rather than migrant labour, causing challenges, to say the least, for the sector in the States.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, isn't it? And when you listen to the audio and you listen to the numbers that are, and we know, anyone that's been to the US will see that on many farms there's a huge amount of immigrant, particularly Mexican labour. It is a tricky thing. I mean, it's not dissimilar from some of the political parties' policies over here in terms of reducing the amount of labour coming into the UK. Particularly, you've only got to look at some would say the demise. I mean, it's just hanging on for grim life, and there's some coming in, but it's very expensive and it's very bureaucratic. Look at the seasonal workers scheme that we had here, and how that's been utterly wrecked. And particularly actually for the UK, where there was a really good, I suppose, seasonal flow, like more thinking along the lines of students coming over for the summer. They do picking or whatever in Hereford, and then they go back and carry on with their studies or as part of their year out or something like that. So, yeah, it's not an unfamiliar policy trajectory in terms of immigration, labour force, and trying to make your own people work. Those they're all intrinsically linked, aren't they? And equally as challenging.
And Louise, Donald Trump saying he loves American farmers, America loves its farmers. I know a lot of Farmers Weekly podcast listeners will be thinking, well, if only our government loved UK farmers as much as Donald Trump says he loves American farmers, we might be in a whole different position.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether all American farmers would feel particularly loved by Donald Trump. But yeah, that enthusiasm is, it's always good to hear. That's very different to what we're getting from this government. Farming's being made to feel as though it's a bit of an inconvenience to this government. And they're not that keen on talking to them or dealing with them. Donald Trump, you can ask him anything. And we saw in that press conference that he took any question that was fired at him. And you and I both know, Johann, we can't do that when we go along to a sort of press huddle or press briefing with the government. We have to pre-submit our questions, or we're only allowed one question each with no comeback. But, there's the American politicians, the American government, being very, very open, taking all the questions and giving some interesting answers. So, yeah, wouldn't that be nice if the current government in the UK could learn something from that?
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And now a special word with this week's podcast partner, Andy McGrath from seed breeder KWS. Andy, welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. We're going to talk about one of your new winter wheat varieties, KWS Scope, generating a real buzz with growers at the moment.
That's right, Johann. KWS Scope was added to the 25-26 AHDB recommended list as the highest yielding winter wheat. It's a robust hard group 4 wheat with short, stiff straw, excellent disease resistance, and one of the big factors is it's got built-in protection against orange wheat blossom midge.
And with those attributes, Andy, you're describing KWS Scope as a variety, as the complete package.
Well, it's because farmers want consistency. They want varieties that offer strong, treated and untreated yields while also keeping input costs in check. And we feel that Scope can deliver just that, a higher yield at a lower cost. And it's all about efficiency performance, as it's a win-win for everyone. Scope hits that sweet spot.
And understandably, Andy, more growers are going for these varieties with built-in traits.
Exactly that. Farmers want reliable performance year in, year out. And even when the weather is completely different season, they're looking for that consistency. And we feel this is where KWS Scope shines. It not only offers top-end yield potential, but also checks the critical boxes, as mentioned, such as orange wheat blossom midge, a good specific weight, and season-to-season consistency. These types of traits are no longer nice-to-haves. These traits are must-haves.
And more varieties with these built-in traits are coming through the KWS pipeline, Andy. This one, KWS Scope, a little bit like its predecessor, KWS Dorsum.
I agree. It's a perfect example of how our breeding program at KWS continues to evolve, delivering varieties that will help growers stay productive, profitable, and prepared for the future. And Scope's doing just that. KWS Dorsum earned its popularity being a consistent, dependable Group 4 choice, but Scope is very much a step on from that and a strong foundation.
Andy McGrath from KWS, this week's podcast partner. Thank you very much.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, recent tax hikes mean diesel twin cab pickups are no longer the bargain they once were. So should you go fully electric instead? Well, the new Maxus e-Terran 9 is Europe's first all-electric four-wheel drive pickup, and it's just gone on sale in the UK. It's being billed as a game changer, and Simon Cooper of vehicle dealer Tyson Cooper in Ipswich told me all about it.
It's the Terran E9. It's the new Maxus four-wheel drive, fully electric pickup truck. Just launched in the UK now, and it's not actually classified as a pickup truck. It's classified as an electric van.
So it's an electric van. It looks nothing like a van at all. It's made in China, but it looks very American. It's got a lot of what some people I guess would call road presence.
Yes, it is rather a large vehicle. It's obviously four-wheel drive. It's got air suspension on it. It'll tow 3.5 tonne, which is very much a first for an electric van or pickup. Because it's classified as an electric van, it also then basically comes into play with the payload only being 660 kilograms. It's still fully VAT reclaimable. You write it down as an electric van, and the best bit, of course, is the government give us £5,000 towards the purchase of the vehicle, because, of course, it's an electric van.
And the BIC rate on this sort of vehicle is going to be really favourable compared to what the government has just done to twin cab pickups.
Yes, it is. If you're looking at this, you'll be looking at a 3% benefit in kind in comparison to the average twin cab pickup truck, which would be somewhere between 30 and 38%, depending on the emissions.
And there are only 2 of these in the country at the moment, am I right?
This was one of the first ones in the country. There's a few more come through now, and there's stock arriving in July for the actual launch of the vehicle.
And whenever people talk about electric vehicles, the big question they always want to know is, what's the range?
On this particular one, 260 miles. And having tested it ourselves for quite a few days, we can say that, yes, it's quite an accurate figure.
And for a vehicle that's this size, that's not a bad figure at all, is it?
No, it's not. Not when you consider some of the smaller electric cars that you see as a passenger car. You may only get a couple of 100 miles. This is obviously a lot heavier, a lot more powerful. It's very quick 0 to 60, obviously legally, that we've been testing on the roads, and well worth a look. So, yes.
And much interest in it here today?
We've already sold a few to a couple of members over the past couple of weeks. We had it at the Suffolk Show. And we've had a lot of interest in it, particularly for companies and people who are already in pickup trucks, obviously wanting to look after their employees when they change next and not have to spend horrendous amounts of money on obviously personal tax.
Now, for people who think that maybe they don't want to take the whole leap and go fully electric, you've also got another pickup here. You've got the Ford Ranger Hybrid, which is also new.
Yes, it is. Again, it's another brand new model that Ford have brought into the UK. It's what they call a PHEV, which is a plug-in hybrid. So it has a petrol engine, a 2.3 petrol engine. It's then also got an electric engine. It has the ability to run on just electric. What that does is it reduces the emissions down and obviously then reduces the benefit in kind taxational levels in comparison to what a normal pickup truck would be. So there are some savings to be made there. It's not quite as good as obviously this full electric truck, but well worth having a look at.
So almost, I guess, best of both worlds, do you think?
Almost, yes. Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, probably would be the easiest way to say. And it's a very good effort for the first sort of try on a PHEV, because the manufacturers have been put under a lot of pressure to obviously reduce the emissions, but equally the truck has to be fit for purpose. It's got to be able to do a job, it's got to be able to tow, it's got to be able to go off road, and getting that balance is, it's quite an art form, and I think the manufacturers have been trying very hard, and I think we'll see a lot more new models coming through over the next couple of years, which will hopefully start to fill the gap.
That's Simon Cooper from Tyson Cooper. So Hugh, this isn't, well, I guess many listeners will be familiar with the old two-wheel drive Maxus. This isn't just a four-wheel drive version of that two-wheel drive truck. This is a from the ground, all new four-wheel drive pickup.
Yeah, no, look, in terms of what it's doing and what it could potentially do and its price point and the fact that it could pull 3.5 ton and the tax thing that it's in as a van still, unlike the other pickups, you wouldn't not look at it, would you? We're just about to get some solar on the roof here, and we will put a charge point in because we finally just got 3-phase into this yard, which has been a long going project. And yeah, it makes you think, actually, yeah. And here's the irony, Johann. I just bought a second-hand Hilux to replace my old one, which is about fit for export now. And yeah, when you look at how much, it's a great truck, don't get me wrong. Yeah, they've got some competing to do, haven't they? And of course, don't forget, Isuzu are about to launch. I'm not sure if you can order it yet, but it's all over their websites and it's all over their publicity. And some of you people will have seen the pull-ups that were at the shows on Isuzu stands, where they've obviously got the diesel vehicles, but they're about to put a fully electric 4x4 out as well. Similar spec to the one that your man there's just been describing. And then, of course, in America, the big 4x4 leader there, because they all love huge, giant Dodge Ram type ship boat things that are, if ever you've driven one, it's like driving a blooming boat. The Rivian out there is going great guns and has sold a lot, and is a pretty impressive spec and price point. And then they are currently mobilising in Europe. So we probably won't see... Funny enough, I met someone who's doing some work for them the other day. And yes, they're probably mobilising Germany, French markets, somewhere like that at the moment. In terms of coming into the UK, probably because the right-hand drive thing, it takes a while to come through. And actually, he was telling me how much we never think about it much for cars, do we? We think about it when we talk about having to put drugs through trials, be that animal drugs or human drugs or agrochemicals. We talk about, because we're farmers and this is a podcast about farming. Oh, it costs X million to develop an ag chem and get it licensed globally. My word, how much it costs to get a car specced up and licensed. It's just off the scale. And of course, I'd never thought about it. So they've obviously jumped into Europe with that one. They've invested all the money. They're going through the certification for the EU market. They'll have to spend the whole thing again to get certification for the UK market. So in some ways, it makes us slightly behind the curve compared to the rest of the EU. So there is plenty coming our way. But yeah, there'll be some fair choice probably in another year or two, won't there?
And Louise, are you ready to go electric yourself? Are you in that space, as they say?
Well, that's a really good question, because I do need to change my car. And as you can imagine, Johann, I do a lot of miles in my job. I am looking at electric vehicles. I haven't fully made up my mind yet. I see that the government this week have given drivers a financial incentive to drive an electric vehicle or to switch to an electric car. Now, the car has to be under a certain value for you to be eligible for that. But that did actually grab my attention this week, and thought, well, look, there's another reason why I should perhaps take the plunge and go electric. I don't know a lot about pickups, and I don't drive a pickup. I never have driven a pickup, so I'm not quite sure what advantages or disadvantages it would have. Someone else would be more knowledgeable on me than that. But yeah, things are improving in this area all the time, aren't they? And it's something that I am seriously considering.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're up before sunrise during the busiest time of year and still on your feet 12 hours later. The V12 Cotswold dealer boot is made for days like this, built for comfort, safety and strength to handle whatever the day throws at you. They've been independently tested by Sartre against the market-leading boot, proving they're not only the toughest, but outperforming the competition in long-lasting durability as well. No gimmicks, just boots that do their job, so you can do yours. Now that's fair dinkum. Use the code podcast20 for 20% off your first order. Visit v12footwear.com to place your order now. The V12 Cotswold gets tougher with age.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast. Welcome along wherever you're listening to us from. You can email us, podcast@fwi.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you, what you're up to, how harvest is going. And if you're in the UK itself, you can also message us by texting the word farm, followed by your message to 88440. Lots to talk about this week. Louise, I was particularly taken with the article that you sent me from the Times about DEFRA's own survey suggesting that just 1/3 of farmers at the moment are confident about the future.
Yeah, it was really interesting, wasn't it, to see that this article was based on DEFRA's own poll. Actually, I think they call it their opinion tracker. And it shows just how much damage has been done and how little confidence there is in the government, since Labour came to power. Now, there wasn't huge confidence in what the previous administration was doing. I do accept that, but it's absolutely plummeted now. These words like trust and confidence, which we've been using repeatedly in the last few months, they came across really strongly. And it is the government's own report. So when you hear that just 1 in 3 farmers feel positive about their future, and also I think there's a quarter of them felt that the whole sector was going to really, really struggle. Something's gone wrong, don't you? We really do need a government that's going to work with the farming sector, not against it. And at the moment, it feels like they're really working against farmers and really working against being able to meet their demands, their sort of sustainable demands. And I think DEFRA's going to have to take a really big look at this report and decide what they're going to do.
The farmers not only lacking confidence, Hugh, but leaving the industry completely, getting out.
Yeah, I think it's probably hard. If you look at the graph, some of the papers published the graph that went out with it, which shows you, I think it's like a 30 or 40 year history. And it is a big spike in terms of numbers going out. And we know there's a lot of change and a lot of churn. There's a lot of consolidation going on. Clearly, because of the inheritance tax scenario, there's a lot of retirements happening now and taking cash out or decapitalising, because there's a heck of a lot of farms on the market, isn't there, when you look everywhere? So that's steady. So no surprises, but it's this continuing trajectory, isn't it, of consolidation, larger units, you would hope more efficient units, but equally it's probably more fluid now than it has been for a long time, isn't it?
I must admit that when I first read the article, I didn't realise that this survey was DEFRA's own survey. That's made it really difficult, Louise, for the government to dispute the findings, its own findings.
Yes, it has, hasn't it? And I think that there were, I might have remembered this incorrectly, but I think they maybe had 1,400 different farm businesses responding to it. So, the message is coming across loud and clear. I mean, we know what the strength of feeling is out there at the moment. You can only be too aware of it as you're going around visiting farms. But this is their report, as you rightly said. This isn't something being shoved under the Times editor's nose by an interest group. This is actually DEFRA's report, and it tells it how it is.
Moving on to other news, Jeremy Clarkson posting on social media that his diddly squat farm has gone down with bovine tuberculosis, and then hastening to add that by that he means the cattle on the farm, not the people. But not good news for any farm, bovine TB, Hugh.
No, it's horrible news, whether you've got 3 cows or 3,000. It's just not a good thing. Some might say, well, because of where he is and the history of the wildlife there, etc., it was inevitable. I suppose from a farming perspective, and knowing the hours and hours of not just talking and meetings, and then the hours and hours of worry and stress and agony that comes with TB, whether it's the people trying to work the policy or trying to work with government at the moment to formulate the policy to refresh it, whether it's the people on farm suffering as a result of the stress and the impact it has on their business, on their mental health. The whole thing is just bloody awful. And I can only hope that off the back of this, whilst it's really bad news for him, and he's obviously he'd be clearly shocked by it, if he does highlight this in his next series, and it really brings it home to the wider population, the impact this disease has, and it's not just about the badger debate, it's not just about this, that, and the other, then hopefully it might do some good in terms of sharing with the rest of the populace why we need to do some of the things that, as farmers, we've been asking government to help us do for decades. And whether that's around wildlife control, whether that's around all sorts of different policy points. And I mean, it's just such a huge arena. But it's a horrible piece of news for him. But I hope something good comes out of it, in the sense of educating everyone as to what horrible disease it is, and an annoying disease, stressful disease, and the hundreds of millions it costs us as a country to manage. Not just that's the government, let alone the cost to individual businesses and people that are impacted by it.
That is a good point, Louise, that a terrible, terrible disease for all the heartache, the stress and the worry that it causes to farmers. If there is one good thing, as Hugh says, that could come out of this, it might be that the wider non-farming public actually realise what a devastating disease this can be.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that, as you say, that heartache, that anguish, it's really terrible. And, for the farmers affected, it's very, very, very stressful indeed. So, yes, it may well give it a bit more exposure. I'm not sure what the solution is going to be, but as you and I know, it's one of the worst things that can happen to a farm, and absolutely devastating for those people. So that will get aired, and there will be greater understanding of the issue. So that's going to have to be helpful, I think.
Not the sort of thing you want happening on any farm at any time, let alone the height of harvest. Although combine harvesters, Hugh, have halted. Rain has stopped play in many parts of the country.
Yes, it's the UK drought irony, isn't it? We all start talking about drought like mad, and then the rain keeps coming. Although let's not forget, there are still certain parts of the country. We've had a fair bit of rain down here in the south now. There are still certain parts of the country that have not had. So we just bear in mind, there are still other parts of the country, I'm thinking particularly in the northeast, they still not had very much rain. I went up the M6 the other day, and from Cheshire upwards, up into the northwest, up into Cumbria to the Scots, it's the land of milk and honey. There's wall-to-wall grass, and the maize looks fantastic, da-da-da-da-da. So, there's still parts without rain. The harvest is very much stop-start when you talk to people, and it's really variable, isn't it? You speak to some people. I was talking to someone yesterday, East Anglia. Grain yield's not that bad up in Norfolk. On some of the dry, more pinched ground, it's obviously not surprisingly challenged. But the big worry, I think, really is the straw. And of course, these straw volumes in some places going into crops where it's not even It's not even worth baling it because it's so like some spring barleys that have been cut, where it's just a piddle of straw out the back of the combine. So you're going to end up raking 19 rows into one, and then 20% of it will be stone. So they're just chopping it. I was talking to one gentleman, they were just chopping it. He said, I felt really bad doing it. He said, but there's just no way we could get all of that into a big enough row to go into a baler. So straw is going to be a challenge. And you worry with all these rain showers, there's still a lot of wheat standing. What's that doing to your Hagberg? It's a falling number, and with all the blooming rain on at the moment, it will be a falling number standing in the fields.
Yeah, straw shortages, grass also tight. The Rural Payments Agency, Hugh, saying it will consider derogation applications for grazing under certain environmental schemes.
Yeah, and that's good that they're doing that. The only thing with this is it always takes so long, and it's like, could we not have an instrument in place that says, if we go, I don't know what the reference, the Met Office must have some reference system which looks at rainfall by county or by area or whatever. And could you not say that actually if rainfall goes below X for Y period of time, then automatically triggers, at that point, that the grazing is basically going to go to sticks and is going to be useless. At that point, it triggers these derogations, which allow, because there are plenty of producers, and I was talking to one person in East Kent a month or so ago. There are plenty of producers who have no grazing, or their grazing ran out months ago, and they are, they've been sat there in limbo. They may have stewardship land, which had like legumes on it or whatever that they're not meant to graze. And then finally, a month and a half later, the RPA allow the derogation and they can do it. So, yeah, it's great news that they've done that. And I'm sure there will be producers who find that useful, although most of that stewardship legume type stuff, given the heat we've had, has probably burnt off to nothing anyway. But actually what we need is a really smart system of triggering that earlier. And particularly, look, we're not being stupid here. We know we're going to get more of these sort of weird, dry, harsh spells, which are going to need this in the future. So it just needs a smarter, quicker, less pain-free system of allowing people to utilise those resources should the worst happen in terms of drought and lack of rainfall.
A fantastic and sensible idea, Hugh. Hugh, the markets, are they smarter and pain-free too this week?
There you go. What a beautiful segue. Steer deadweight this week actually goes up about just 1.2 pence up, 641.3 this week, up from 640.1 last week. Compare that to a year ago. Finished steer deadweight average was 483.9. So we're way ahead of where we were 12 months ago. Live weight average drops back about 7p, 361.9. Sheep rings SQQ deadweight this week goes up again, 754.1. That is up nearly it was over 10p. That's up about 11p nearly on the week. The live weight sheep price 345.2. That drops back 5p. Pig price this week's gone up half a p, 208 dead. Up from 207.5 last week. And then the arable markets, not much, again, I'm afraid, not much joy there at all. Feed wheat's sort of actually gone up 20p a tonne, so there's a little bit of cheer there. £163.40 this week, spot on feed wheat. Compare that to a year ago, 176.60. Milling wheat, 189.60. That has dropped back £3 on the week. Feed barley, 143.40. That's actually gone up £1, but it's still very low, isn't it? 143 quid. Bad if you are growing, phenomenal if you are feeding. Oilseed rape 397.50. That has gone up just about £1 on the week. Feed peas 201.7, drops back £6. Feed beans 211.30. That drops back £1 on the week. The oil price is dropping back a bit actually, but not reflected in the diesel price. This week 69.4 pence per litre. That is up about a penny and a half on the week.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Want to get the most out of your on-farm AD plant? Unlock its full potential with Amor. Amor run their own AD so they know what works and how to help you. Their lab offers fast, insightful testing alongside valuable advice to keep your digester stable and productive. From biological management to rapid feedstock analysis, Amor has got you covered. For more details, email amor@abagri.com. That's AMUR@abagri.com. Let's get your AD running at its best.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, a Scottish farmer has left a legacy worth almost £500,000 to support the work of the RSABI. Orkney farmer Charlie Gaughan left £470,000 to the charity, which provides emotional, financial and practical support to people in farming and crofting in Scotland. Here's RSABI Chief Executive Carol McLaren.
We were all quite affected and quite emotional about it, actually, that this farmer up in Orkney could have been thinking about us and, had planned to leave this amount to us. And I think he really had quite a modest way of living, considering the amount he's kindly left to charity. I think day by day, a very modest lifestyle, and I think probably quite a few people surprised by the amount of money he's been able to share with charities in his legacy. Because as well as RSABI, he also left a very substantial amount to a number of cancer charities too. So, while we're really grateful, there's other charities that have also benefited from the legacy.
So not somebody who was known to you as an RSABI supporter until the legacy came along, Carol, but obviously somebody who very much wanted to support the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did ask, how did he know about us? Had someone suggested us to him? Maybe had a lawyer suggested the charity to him? But no, it had been absolutely very much his own wishes, to be able to support us. And I think through the farming press, he did read the farming press, that he had heard about the work that we do, and that he had really decided that was, where he'd like to put an awful lot of his legacy. He had sold his farm a few years before he passed away, when he wasn't in the best of health himself, and so clearly, he decided to put that money aside and share it in this way. But I think from quite a young age, it's quite an interesting history, because he left Orkney to come down to Perthshire to work with a well-known Aberdeen Angus herd. And I think it was when he was there that someone really encouraged him, perhaps the owner of the herd, to put money aside, to think about a rainy day, to think about the future. And he really took that to heart. And so he did squirrel money away. And I think he took quite a pride in that he managed to save money and invest money and things, and pride in being able to do that. But he had an interesting life. He did work in Aberdeenshire after Pirkney, and eventually, managed to buy the farm that he worked on for many, many years. So, he was very much self-made. He'd, built up his own savings and managed to buy that precious farm. And he continued to run Aberdeen Angus cows on the farm there, I think, for many years until, close to the end of his time on the farm. But he also travelled out to Australia, which quite surprised me, because I kind of thought, I don't know if he felt like someone who would head off and do international travel, but he went out to Australia and went to visit many Aberdeen Angus farmers and herds out there, and had very much enjoyed that. And also took a pride in showing his stock as well locally, and I think a few years ago had decided to return all the silverware that he'd won to the Orkney Agricultural Society, so that others could benefit from it.
Not the sort of legacy that comes along very often, Carol. What is RSABI going to use the money for?
I mean, it is an incredible amount, isn't it? And I think with any donations, of course, there's a real sense of responsibility, because no matter what the amount, it's so appreciated by the charity. But yeah, this is a large amount. We are we are operating in a tough environment in terms of, the charity sector in general. There's a lot of competition and a lot of charities are struggling. We are very fortunate in that we get so much support from the industry, and really when something like this comes along at such a busy time, the charity's growing, demands on the charity are growing. We've got a 24/7 helpline now. We expect this to be our busiest ever year for counselling support, and that's taking up quite a lot of funds and resource as well. But we've expanded our wings into things like the health huts, and certainly suicide prevention is something that we're really working hard on now. So quite a number of new initiatives that are really delivering a lot of benefits, but do take obviously resource to deliver as well, and to deliver well. So it gives us some sort of financial security to have those funds. But as I say, every penny will be carefully considered, and we really want to do Charlie proud, and that looking over what we are doing, he would feel very happy with what we're achieving.
That's Carol McLaren from the RSABI, Scotland's rural charity. And for free confidential support, the RSABI support service is available 24 hours a day, every day of the year, by calling 0808 1234 555. That's 0808 1234 555, and calls will not show up on phone bills. You can also use the confidential web chat service available on the RSABI website at rsabi.org.uk. Louise, what an amazing story. And Charlie Gorn, what an amazingly generous man.
What a windfall. Amazing, as you say, really fantastic. And I'm sure that the charity in Scotland will be able to do a great deal of good with that. It sounds as though Charlie was a very astute gentleman when it came to money and finances. And isn't it incredible that the farming industry up in Scotland is going to benefit from, his good fortune?
Yeah, not the sort of legacy we see every day. And it just goes to show, I guess, the high regard in which our rural charities, our farming charities are held.
Yes, it does. And of course, it's never been a more important time for them either, has it? When you look at some of the work that charity's been doing up in Scotland, it has been, quite a bit of it has been around the mental stress and the anxiety that some farmers are up against at the moment. Now, obviously, they do other work as well, but I think looking at what they've done up in that part of Scotland recently, there's been a big focus on that. So it's really needed, this work, and it's fantastic to get that sort of, contribution funding, that they're going to be able to keep on doing it. And I'm sure it's going to be a very good use of that money, and exactly as Charlie would have wanted it used.
Yeah, it is a lovely story, isn't it? And what a big surprise for the people at the charity, but no doubt a very welcome one with all the work that they do.
Yeah, very important work at a very challenging time for the farming industry right across the UK. That is it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. We do hope you've enjoyed what you've heard this week. As always, please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really like what you hear, please do leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with all the latest news, views and analysis of all the big stories in UK agriculture. But for now, until next week, I'm Johann Tasker.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
Thank you for listening. This episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast was brought to you in association with KWS.